Hello, namaste. My name is Janapati, and welcome today. Happy December, happy and most auspicious day of Gita Jayanti, the advent of the Bhagavad Gita today. So it is a very auspicious day. It is also Mokshada Ekadasi. So I'd like to take this opportunity to offer my respects to you. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to do a special class of the Bhagavad Gita today for the honor of the advent of the Bhagavad Gita. And I'd like to offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, Jagat Guru, and unto His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And since it's Mokshada Ekadasi today, it's also a special day with the Bhagavad Gita advent. The Ekadasi for Mokshada, it has to do with respecting and honoring our ancestors. So I'd like to place in my thought the spirit soul that was my father, who left his body last January. I had given him opportunities to hear about the Bhagavad Gita and hear chanting and receive prasadam. So I'd like to offer this class to him as a dedication. And let's chant. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Okay, we are reading in chapter 6, the Shankha Yoga. And Gita Jayanti, the Advent, what's really nice is the word Jaya also means victory. And the reality is that the advent of the Bhagavad Gita was a victory for every living entity. We say Jaya, like Jaya Srila Prabhupada, or we're saying victory, Ki Jai, There's victory over death, over the illusion of being the body, of our lost state, of attaining this true victory in the battle of our life, to go back home to Krishna, and so we're so fortunate to have the Bhagavad Gita. And as we know, although we are celebrating the Advent when Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Bhagavad Gita is an eternal treatise that is constantly revealing its inner wisdoms to us all. And this can be easily achieved by the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, by the dedicating of our life, of surrendering, of taking the message of the Bhagavad Gita into our heart and applying it in our life. We are given the vision, the spiritual vision, to know what to do, to get victory for this battle of life. So we are reading text 19. Yata dipo niva tashto negate sopama smrita yogino yata chittasya yunjato yogan atmana. Yata as dipa, a lamp. Niva tashtaha, in a place without wind. Na, does not. Ingate, waver. Sa upama, compared to that. Smrita, likened. Yoganaha, of the yogi. Yata chittasya, whose mind is controlled. Yunjataha, constantly engaged in. Yogam, meditation. Atmana, on transcendence. Translation. Another very famous verse. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains steady in its meditation on the transcendent self. So this such beautiful poetic symbolism. We have this lamp, and sometimes the lamp is, if it's out exposed, it's being blown out or blown hither and thither. And the lamp, though placed in a cave where there is no wind, or like in what Srila Prabhupada says, the eye of the storm, solace of Krishna consciousness, the names of Krishna. The mind is controlled. It's very difficult to be able to give protection for our mind, right? Without placing it upon Krishna. We cannot artificially try to keep, like you're out there and you're trying to hold the candle in the wind and stuff like that, and you're trying to put your hand up to it, and it's just not really working. We need a very secure cave, right? And so when the mind is controlled, focused in this transcendental self, in meditation, in Krishna consciousness, then there is no wavering. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. A truly Krishna conscious person, always absorbed in transcendence, in constant undisturbed meditation on his worshipable Lord, is as steady as a lamp in a windless place. Beautiful. That's a beautiful purport. Just should be on your wall. The verse in the purport. I'm going to read that again. The whole thing. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. A truly Krishna-conscious person, always absorbed in transcendence, in constant undisturbed meditation on his worshipable Lord, is as steady as a lamp in a windless place. Text 20 to 23. Here we go, 3 verses. Ooh. Hope I don't slaughter the Sanskrit so bad here, but I'll give it the best shot here. Yatro paramate chitam nirudyam yoga shevaya yatra shaivat manat manam pashyanatmani tushati shukam matyat itikam yat tad buddhi grahayam atindriyam veti yatra na shaivayam stitash chalati tatvataha yam labva cha param labam manyate nagitam manyate nadikam tata yasmin stito na dukkena guru napi vichatyate tam vidya dukya samyoga viyogam yoga sankinitam yatra. In that state of affairs, uparamate, when one feels transcendental happiness, chitam, mental activities, nirudyam, restrained from matter, yoga sevaya, by performance of yoga, yatra, in that, cha, also, eva, certainly, atmana, by the pure mind, atmana, manam, self, pashyat, realizing the position, atmani, in the self, tushati, becomes satisfied, shukam, happiness, adhyat, yantikam, supreme, yat, in which, tat, that, buddhi, intelligence, grahayam, acceptable, atrindiyam, transcendental, veti, knows, yatra, wherein, na, never, cha, also, eva, certainly, ayam, in this, shtita, situated, chalati, moves, tatvata, from the truth, yam, that which, labdava, by attainment, cha, also, aparam, any other, labam, gain, manyate, does not mind, na, never, adikyam, more than that, tata, from that, yasmin, in which, shtitaha, being situated, na, never, dukkena, by miseries, guru napi, even though very difficult, vichalyate, becomes shaken, tam, that, vidyat, you must know, dukya samyoga, miseries of material contact, viyogam, extermination, yoga samginitam, trance in yoga. Woo! That was a mouthful. Okay, translation 20 to 23. The stage of perfection is called trance or samadhi, when one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys himself through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Wow, that is really a jam-packed verse. So, yeah, it's, this is an amazing verse to talk about. But you know what's really interesting about this? Established thus in this joyous state of transcendence, or samadhi, which is referred to in the Ashtanga system as samadhi, but complete immersion, connection, yukta, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Understanding that they are a jivatma, pure spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, with the pure mind that's been purified of the material attachments, right? And at this higher state, this higher taste, right? We've been eating dog shit before. We're like, this is really good dog shit. And then we start to chant Krishna's names and we realize actually we're eating dog shit. And so it's like, why do we want to eat dog shit when we can have this wonderful pastries or whatever of Krishna consciousness? And this is a true higher taste because it's our natural state uncovered, right? And one never wants to go back. You know, they've referred to that as going back, and Jesus has referred to as a dog returning to his own vomit, right? We don't want to go back to that. When we get a higher taste, they think, you know, there is no greater gain. There's nothing better than this service to Krishna. Purport. By practice of yoga, one becomes gradually detached from material concepts. This is the primary characteristic of the yoga principle, and after this one becomes situated in trance or samadhi, which means that the yogi realizes the supersoul through transcendental mind and intelligence. So we have a transcendental mind, transcendental senses. Just like we have material mind and a material senses, we actually have a spiritual mind and a spiritual senses that we perceive the absolute truth. And after this, one becomes situated in trance or samadhi, which means that the yogi realizes the supersoul through transcendental mind and intelligence without any of the misgivings of identifying the self with the superself. Yoga practice is more or less based on principles of the Patanjali print system. So Patanjali, of course, was a Vedic philosopher and practitioner of I don't really know a whole lot about Patanjali, but I mean, generally, if you're teaching yoga, hatha yoga, or yoga asanas, sometimes you learn about Patanjali, and his Yoga Sutras. And I would recommend there is, and maybe I'll actually put the link for his my god brother Acharya Das, who's much more knowledgeable about spiritual wisdom than I am, did a class on the Yoga Sutras. So we shouldn't actually try to read the Yoga Sutras without a proper commentary, and Acharya Das is very good for that. So I'll put a link of his YouTube channel below so that you can peruse and watch his videos. I would recommend sincerely watching his classes that he has on his YouTube channel, and especially the one on the Yoga Sutras. So you can Google that when you go there. Some unauthorized commentators try to identify the individual soul with the super soul, and the monists think this to be liberation, but they do not understand the real purpose of the Patanjali system of yoga. There is an acceptance of transcendental pleasure in the Patanjali system, but the monists do not accept this transcendental pleasure out of fear of jeopardizing the theory of oneness. The duality of knowledge and the knower is not accepted by the non-dualist. But in this verse, transcendental pleasure realized through transcendental senses is accepted, and this is corroborated by Patanjali Muni, the famous exponent of the yoga system. The great sage declares in his Yoga Sutras, Purushartha shunyanam gunanmanam plati prashadaha kaivalyam svarupa prashtita vachiti shaktir iti. This chiti shakti, or internal potency, is transcendental. It's the Radharani, the energy of Radharani. Purushartha means material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and at the end, the attempt to become one with the Supreme. This, quote, oneness with the Supreme, end quote, is called Kaivalyam by the monist. But according to Patanjali, this Kaivalyam is an internal or transcendental potency by which the living entity becomes aware of his constitutional position. In the words of Lord Chaitanya, the state of affairs is called Cheto Darpana Marjanam, or the clearance of the impure mirror of the mind. So, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his prayers also said one should chant the holy names of the Lord in a humble state. Wrong verse. that all glories to the congregational chanting and singing of Krishna's names, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years together. So this dust is like on the heart, on our heart, like it is a mirror. And the mirror, when it is covered by material energy, we cannot actually see. So that's the analogy of a mirror. This clearance is actually liberation, or bhava mahadvagni nirvapanam. The theory of nirvana, also preliminary, corresponds with this principle. In the Bhagavatam, this is called swarupena vyavashtiti. The Bhagavad Gita also confirms this situation in this verse. After nirvana, and we've talked about this, the state of nirvana, or material cessation, there is a manifestation of spiritual activities or devotional service to the Lord, known as Krishna consciousness. The word in Sanskrit also that we refer to is Brahma Bhutam. In the words of the Bhagavatam, Swarupena Vyavyashtiti, this is the real life of the living entity. Maya, or illusion, is a condition of spiritual life contaminated by material infection. Liberation from this material infection does not mean destruction of the original eternal position of the living entity. Patanjali also accepts this by his words, Kaivalyam Swarupa Prashtita Va Chiti Shaktir Iti. This Chiti Shakti, or transcendental pleasure, is real life. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutras as Anandamayo Bayashat. This natural transcendental pleasure is the ultimate goal of yoga, and is easily achieved by execution of devotional service or bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga will be vividly described in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In the yoga system, as described in this chapter, there are two kinds of samadhi, called samprajnata samadhi and asamprajnata samadhi. When one becomes situated in the transcendental position by various philosophical researches, it is called samprajnata samadhi. In the asamprajnata samadhi, there is no longer any connection with mundane pleasure, for one is then transcendental to all sorts of happiness derived from the senses. When the yogi is once situated in that transcendental position, he is never shaken from it. Unless the yogi is able to reach this position, he is unsuccessful. Today's so-called yoga practice, which involves various sense pleasures, is contradictory. A yogi indulging in sex and intoxication is a mockery. So let that be known when you see and hear about people doing all this kind of nonsense in the name of yoga asanas. For those yogis who are attracted by the siddhis, perfection in the process of yoga, are not perfectly situated. If the yogis are attracted by the byproducts of yoga, then they cannot attain the stage of perfection as is stated in this verse. Persons, therefore, indulging in the make-show practice of gymnastics feats or cities should know that the aim of yoga is lost in that way. So it's a very popular thing to do asanas and teach asanas, and there's a lot of, look at me, what I can do, and sort of like show off. I can twist myself in so many ways. I can stand on my head. I can do all these kinds of things very perfectly. My sun salutations is smooth and graceful. And meanwhile, my mind is contaminated. So the byproducts of that yoga is not the goal of yoga or the yoga asanas. The best practice of yoga in this age is Krishna consciousness, which is not baffling. A Krishna conscious person is so happy in his occupation that he does not aspire after any other happiness. There are many impediments, especially in this age of hypocrisy, to practicing Hatha Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. But there is no such problem in executing Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. So, as long as the material body exists, one has to meet the demands of the body, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. But a person who is in pure Bhakti Yoga or in Krishna consciousness does not arouse the senses while meeting the demands of the body. So we eat to live, not live to eat. We have to eat, we have to sleep. If we're married, we mate, we have to defend things, but we don't arouse the senses to try to stimulate them, to try to get some kind of happiness out of our senses. Rather, we just use it for what we need to do. Sometimes I wish we didn't have to eat at all, because as you get older, you notice a lot of things your tongue wants to eat, or maybe wanted to eat in the past. The body rejects. And so it's just like, I've got to eat to maintain our body. So, but if we didn't have to eat, that would be great. He is callous towards the incidental occurrences such as accidents. Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead there. Rather, he accepts the bare necessities of life, making the best use of a bad bargain, and enjoys transcendental happiness in Krishna consciousness. So, fortunately, we have, instructed by our spiritual master, the systems of Ekadasi and the fasting days and whatnot. And Ekadasi is many levels. You can fast from anything from no water, no food, or no food, or fasting on broth, or just the minimal is to avoid grains like beans, and we engage in more spiritual activities during these days, because beans and grains are generally considered to be a little bit more heavier. So we eat a little lighter on Ekadasi if we do eat, and that helps us focus on our spiritual activities, like reading the Bhagavad Gita. So, he is callous. He is callous towards incidental occurrences such as accidents, disease, scarcity, and even death of a most dear relative. But he is always alert to execute his duties in Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga. Accidents never deviate him from his duty. So that's a pretty, an interesting thing. It's not, personally, not that I was not sad to lose my father, to have his association, but because I have been very fortunate to come into contact with a pure devotee of Krishna, and he brought the knowledge of our true existence, of not being the body, and the Bhagavad Gita, the message of the Bhagavad Gita, to just like Arjuna was instructed by Krishna that the people on the battlefield are not, their bodies are dying, but everybody's body dies, but we do not die, we continue on. has been a very liberating experience. And so I can relate to this, because even in my own life with my brothers and my family members, I've had to I've been taking on the role of helping them with their grief in this, and the misconception that my father is gone, has disappeared, it's just because his body is broken down. I've been able to, fortunately, be able to speak the message and the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, so it's very wonderful. And this is what Bhaktivedanta Swami is. You have to stay on alert to execute the duties of Krishna consciousness and not be lamentful, because as my spiritual master said, to think that, to be lamenting, to be grieving so extremely over the false idea that the person is gone, is actually ignorance, because the person is not gone. They've just been transferred to a different place. They're on to the next step. And that's what I was explaining to my brother. I said, no, our father, that spirit soul, has gone on to wherever Krishna is taking him, where God is taking him now. And he was, I said, you have to know that, right? You do know that we don't just disappear when when our body falls apart. We just continue on. So, as I said, in the embodied soul continually passes through boyhood to youth to old age, or youth and middle age to old age. The soul is similarly takes on another body at the time of death. And that a sober person, a dhiras, a self-realized person, understands this and is not experiencing grief. So, very nice. Alert accidents never deviate him from his duty. So this is what Krishna was telling Arjuna. Don't let this deviate you from what you need to do. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, agama payino nichas tam titikshashva parat. He endures all such incidental occurrences because he knows that they come and go and do not affect his duties. In this way, he achieves the highest perfection in yoga practice. We do not let this become deviated. We stay one focused, steady, determined. We equipose during the ups and downs of our life, because there will be ups and downs and some very serious events, people dying, accidents happening, situations unexpectedly changing the course of our life. We have to stay focused on our service to Krishna and our spiritual master. And this is why we practice sadhana bhakti. So we are cultivating for these difficult times, these storms, these situations, and we can be a lamp in a windless place. We can take shelter of the material world in Krishna. And this is what we do. So, text 24. Sa nishchayana yoktavyo yoga nirvinya chetasha sankalpa prabhavan kamams tayaktva sarvan ashe shata manashavendriya gruman viniyamya samantataha. Sa, that yoga system, nishchayena, with firm determination, yokta vyaha, must be practiced. Yogaha, in such practice, anirvina chetasha, without deviation, sankalpa, material desires, prabhavan, born of, kaman, sense gratification, tyaktva, giving up, sarvan, all, asheshataha, completely, manasa, by the mind, eva, certainly, indriya graman, the full set of senses, Viniyamya, regulating, samantataha, from all sides. Translation, text 24. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with undeviating determination and faith. Beautiful. One should abandon without exception all material desires born of false ego, and thus control all the senses on all sides of the mind. On all sides by the mind. One should abandon without exception all material desires born of false ego, the hankara, right? And thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. So we use the mind in the pure mind when it is practiced, when it is taking shelter in Krishna, with this determination and faith. We protect it from the material desires born from ahankara, thinking that we're the body and we can find happiness in the body. Purport: the yoga practitioner should be determined, should patiently prosecute the practice without deviation. One should be sure of success at the end and pursue this course with great perseverance, not becoming discouraged if there is any delay in the attainment of success. Success is sure for the rigid practitioner. Regarding Bhakti Yoga, Rupa Goswami says, Utsahan nishchayat darat tat karma pravartanat sangatyagat satovriteh salbir bhakti splashidyati. The process of Bhakti Yoga can be executed successfully with full-hearted enthusiasm, perseverance, and determination by following the prescribed duties in the association of devotees and by engaging completely in activities of goodness. Wow, what an amazing statement by Rupa Goswami. So enthusiasm, full-hearted enthusiasm at that, perseverance, and determination in the association of devotees. That's the key, right? Because you need to have people who are doing the same thing as you to help support that. So in the association, and ideally, devotees, advanced devotees would be nice, and engaging in the service. And there are so many ways that you can serve Krishna. It's nice. My spiritual master even said that just to do even the smallest thing for Krishna, to offer food to Krishna, to go and chant Krishna's names, to draw pictures of Krishna, to think about Krishna, to write a poem about Krishna, to gaze upon the beautiful pictures of Krishna and think about Krishna's pastimes, or listening to the pastimes of Krishna in the Krishna book. So many things you can do for Krishna. I like to go out and talk to my tulsi plant and trim her manjaris and offer them to I have a statue of Radha Krishna. I like to give them fresh manjaris, which I think I'll do today. So we have a few tulsi bushes, but you have to be careful about them because they drop their seeds, and she wants to set up wherever there's chanting, she'll appear and she'll show up. And soon you'll have lots of tulsi, a little tulsi forest, so you have to keep an eye on that. I read that. As for determination, one should follow the example of the sparrow who lost her eggs in the waves of the ocean. So this is a beautiful story. A sparrow laid her eggs on the shore of the ocean, but the big ocean carried away the eggs on its waves. The sparrow became very upset and asked the ocean to return her eggs. The ocean did not even consider her appeal. So the sparrow decided to dry up the ocean. She began to pick out the water in her small beak, and everyone laughed at her for her impossible determination. The news of the activity spread, and at last Garuda, the gigantic bird carrier of Lord Vishnu, heard it. he became compassionate towards the small sister bird, his small sister bird, and so he came to see the sparrow. Garuda was very pleased by the determination of the small sparrow, and he promised to help. Thus Garuda at once asked the ocean to return her eggs, lest he himself take up the work of the sparrow. The ocean was frightened at this and returned the eggs. Thus the sparrow became happy by the grace of Garuda. Similarly, the practice of yoga, especially bhakti yoga and Krishna consciousness, may appear to be a very difficult job. But if anyone follows the principles with great determination, the Lord will surely help, for God helps those who help themselves. So there is that saying, God helps those who help themselves. It is all about activity. It is about our determination to do things, and also even not being attached to the results of the things that we do, but just doing them as a service and being very determined. But by the grace of Krishna, Krishna will, and we pray to Krishna, please Krishna, I'm having, we have to understand that we are not very qualified or very powerful, but to be pleasing when we want to love and serve Krishna in a certain way through certain means in things that we do in our life, we can pray to Krishna, please Krishna, protect me and help me do this very nicely for you. And Krishna will help you, because it's said also that when one takes one step towards Krishna, Krishna takes 1,000 steps towards you. And we could read another verse, text 25. Shanahi shanar uparamed buddhya atriti grihitaya atma samstayam Manaha kritva nad kinjit api chintayat shanai, gradually, shanai, step by step. Uparamet, hesitated. Bujya, by intelligence. Driti gritaya, carrying the conviction. Atma shamstam, placed in transcendence. Manaha, mind. Kritva, doing so. Na, nothing. Kinchit, anything else. Api, even. Chinta, yet. Be thinking of. Gradually, step by step, with full conviction, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone, and should think of nothing else. Purport. By proper conviction and intelligence, one should gradually cease sense activities. This is called pratyahara. The mind, being fully controlled by conviction, meditation, and cessation of the senses, should be situated in trance or samadhi. At that time, there is no longer any danger of becoming engaged with the material conception of life. In other words, although one is involved with matter, as long as the material body exists, one should not think about sense gratification. One should think of no pleasure aside from the pleasure of the Supreme Self. This state is easily attained by directly practicing Krishna consciousness. Text 26. Yato yato nischalati manash chanchalam ashtiram tato niyam yaitad atmani eva vasham nayat yataha, whatever, yataha, wherever. Nischalati, verily agitated. Manaha, the mind. Kanchalam, flickering. Ashtiram, unsteady. Tata, from there. Tata, and thereafter. Niyamya, regulating. Etat, this. Atmani, in the self. Eva, certainly. Vasham, control. Nayat, must bring in. Translation, text 26. From whatever and whenever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. The nature of the mind is flickering and unsteady. That's another one of these great statements. The nature of the mind is flickering and unsteady. Just try to do something. I mean, even when we try to do our japa or we're doing Gurunga breathing, we find that our mind is just, and it's just made worse by social media. It used to be that we had TV and you would have 30-minute sitcoms and 30-second commercials, so you were switching things. But now we just scroll, go to app, text somebody, just constantly. Oh, wait a minute, I got to do this. We're so almost everybody is ADHD because of our cell phones and the way things are. But the mind is so flickering and unsteady. But a self-realized soul, self-realized yogi has to control the mind. The mind should not control him. One who controls the mind, and therefore the senses as well, is called Goswami or Swami. And one who is controlled by the mind is called Godas, or the servant of the senses. A Goswami knows the standard of sense happiness. In transcendental sense happiness, the senses are engaged in the service of Hrishikesh, or the supreme owner of the sensor, the master of the senses, the true master of the senses, Krishna. Serving Krishna with purified senses is called Krishna consciousness. That is the way of bringing the senses under full control. What is more, that is the highest perfection of yoga practice. So, we can become Goswami and control our mind and our senses by engaging them in the service of Hrishikesh, the supreme owner of the senses. So, text 27. Prashanta manasham hyanam yoginam shukyam utamam upayati shanta rajasam rama bhutam akalmasham prashanta, mind fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna. Manasam, of one whose mind is so fixed, he certainly. Enam, this. Yoginam, this yogi. Shukam, happiness. Uttamam, the highest. Upayati, attains. Shantarajasam, pacified passion. Brahmabhutam, liberated by identification with the Absolute. Akalmasham, freed from all past sinful reaction. Translation: the yogi whose mind is fixed on me, capital M, right, me, fairly attains the highest happiness. By virtue of his identity with Brahman, he is liberated, his mind is peaceful, his passions are quieted, and he is freed from sin. Purport. Brahmabhuta is a state of being free from material contamination and situated in the transcendental service of the Lord. So that is after we've attained Nirvanam state, Brahmabhuta state of being free from material contamination and situated in Bhakti Yoga, pure devotional service. Mad Bhaktim Labate Param, Bhagavad Gita 18:54. One cannot remain in the quality of Brahman, the Absolute, until one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. So, Vai Manaha Krishna Pada La Vindayo, to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or to remain in Krishna consciousness, is to be factually liberated from the mode of passion and all material contamination. And I think we're going to end there. We'll come to text 28 next time and kind of work on our way through this, about halfway through. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.